Have you ever wondered, just one moment of bravery, throwing yourself to shield a strange child from a rain of razor-sharp crystal, could cause your entire life, from poverty and invisibility, to suddenly plunge straight into the whirlwind of a passionate love and deadly danger with Chicago's most powerful mafia boss? Horrifyingly, that instinctive act not only saved the boy's life, but also unintentionally awakened a love so intense that he's willing to burn the entire world to protect you, while simultaneously turning you into the hunting target of the city's most cold-blooded killers. She saved my son, and now her entire life belongs to me. The cold yet haunting declaration from Alexander Callahan, the man who holds Chicago's darkness in his hands. Can a poor nurse, carrying a secret child inside her, survive when she's swept into the obsessive and violent love of the city's most dangerous man? Stay right now, because the story about to begin will make your heart race with suspense, fear, and melt from a love story of unprecedented intensity. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. All right, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry insects in the vast atrium of John H. Stroger Jr., Hospital of Cook County, casting a harsh glow on the polished floors that reflected the constant rush of Chicago's wounded and weary. It was early October 2025, and the air carried the sharp scent of antiseptic, mixed with the faint desperation of too many nights without rest. I moved through the emergency room like a shadow, quiet, unnoticed, essential only when someone needed stitches or a kind word amid the chaos. My scrubs hung loose on my thin frame, the fabric worn from countless 12-hour shifts and hand-washed in cold water because the laundromat cost too much. At 28, I looked older, cheeks hollow from skipping meals to stretch my paycheck, eyes shadowed from sleep stolen in snatches on break room cots. My tiny apartment on the south side was a single room with peeling paint, a hot plate for cooking, and a mattress on the floor, because a real bed frame was a luxury I couldn't afford. Nights were cold, the wind whistling through cracked windows, and I often wrapped myself in an old thrift store coat just to stay warm enough to dream of something better. Table duties in the ER never ended, wheeling gurneys, holding hands during bad news, cleaning up what others left behind. "Harper, we need you in Trauma Bay 3, a resident would bark, and I'd nod, already moving. That was my life, always moving, always one step behind the relentless rhythm of a city that chewed up the poor and spit them out invisible. The crystal pitcher of iced tea felt heavy in my trembling hands as I navigated the crowded atrium during the hospital's annual charity gala fundraiser. Sponsored by anonymous wealthy donors to support pediatric care, the event transformed the space into something almost magical. Golden chandeliers sparkling, tables draped in white linen, the murmur of Chicago's elite discussing donations over flutes of champagne. I was on break, but old habits died hard. Someone had asked for refills, and I couldn't say no. That's when I saw him, the little boy, no more than 5, with tousled dark hair and a toy truck clutched in his small hands, making soft engine noises oblivious to the danger above. He sat near a VIP table in the corner, the one reserved for the city's most influential shadows. 3 men in tailored suits that screamed old money surrounded him, their conversation low and guarded. I should have kept walking, should have focused on survival, on the rent due, the empty fridge, the secret fear growing inside me that I might be carrying a child I couldn't support alone. But something in that boy's innocent joy tightened my chest with a longing so fierce it hurt. I'd wanted that once, a family, a life beyond counting tips from grateful patients and wondering if the lights would stay on. The gala patrons gestured impatiently at empty glasses, and I forced a polite smile, pouring with hands steadied by years of necessity. As I turned, I heard it, a sharp crack, then chaos. A catering server's heel caught on the atrium's marble edge, the tray tilting. Crystal flutes rained down like deadly stars, aimed straight at the child. Time slowed. The boy looked up, eyes wide, toy frozen. The men reached, but too slow. I didn't think. Thinking was for those with something left to lose. My body moved on the instinct that had carried me through evictions, hunger, and nights when hope felt like a cruel joke. The pitcher shattered as I lunged, 3 steps closing the gap between invisible and seen. I threw myself over the boy, curling around his small form, back exposed to the storm. Glass exploded against my shoulders, white-hot pain stealing my breath, then more impacts, tearing fabric, embedding in flesh. Warmth spread, blood, mine, soaking the scrubs I'd mended so many times. He screamed beneath me, muffled against my chest, and I held tighter, absorbing each shard like penance for a life of quiet desperation. Then silence amid gasps and shouts, a voice above, low, commanding, with the weight of unquestioned power. Don't move. Hands gripped my shoulders, careful yet firm. Look at me. Despite every instinct to flee, I lifted my head. The man kneeling was striking, fair-skinned, sharp features shadowed by intensity, dark eyes holding depths of storm and sorrow. His suit was immaculate, midnight fabric worth more than my yearly earnings. But his gaze burned with something raw, gratitude laced with gnawing guilt, as if my pain echoed a remorse he'd buried deep. "You're hurt," he stated, rage flickering beneath control. "I'm fine," I whispered, voice soft and timid, the way poverty had taught me when speaking to those who held power. "Is he okay?" He studied me, something shifting, a violent emotional conflict tearing at the walls he'd built around losses I couldn't yet fathom. "You saved my son," Alexander Callahan said quietly, the name rippling through the crowd like fear wrapped in respect. "Chicago's most powerful man," whispers said, wealthy beyond measure, fair-skinned heir to an empire of shadows. I'd thrown myself into his world without knowing. Now, his eyes held mine with an intensity that made me feel dangerously seen, suspicion warring with an overwhelming surge, a passionate pull that terrified and thrilled in equal measure. Guilt gnawed at him visibly, remorse for the violence his life invited, consuming conflict as he realized the debt he owed a destitute stranger. As medics swarmed and his arms supported my faltering steps, dizziness and pain numbed me, but curiosity sparked, fearful, guarded, yet intensely alive. For the first time, someone powerful looked at me not through me, and in his tormented gaze, I glimpsed the beginning of something fierce, impossible, tearing at both our hidden wounds. The atrium of John H. Stroger Jr. Hospital of Cook County had never looked more foreign to me than it did on that crisp October evening in 2025. White linen draped every table. Golden light from rented chandeliers danced across crystal stemware, and the murmur of Chicago's wealthiest donors rose and fell like music I had no right to hear. I stood at the edge of it all in my faded navy scrubs, holding a heavy glass pitcher of iced tea that someone had thrust into my hands during my break. "Just help out a minute, Harper. We're short-staffed." I had nodded because saying no had never kept the lights on. My back ached from another 12-hour shift, my stomach hollow from a dinner that had been only a half-eaten granola bar scavenged from the nurse's station. The cold October wind had already begun to sneak through the cracked window of my south side studio the night before, forcing me to sleep in my coat again. I was 28, but exhaustion and hunger had carved deeper lines around my eyes than years alone could explain. I was invisible here, just like everywhere else, a thin, malnourished shadow in borrowed shoes with soles worn paper thin. That was when I noticed the little boy. He couldn't have been more than 5 years old, sitting cross-legged on the marble floor near the most secluded VIP table, pushing a red toy pickup truck back and forth with soft vroom-vroom sounds only a child could make in a room full of predators. Dark curls fell over his forehead, and his small face glowed with a joy so pure it stabbed straight through my chest. I knew that table. Everyone who worked at Stroger knew it by reputation. Reserved for the city's untouchables. The men seated there wore suits that cost more than I earned in a year. Midnight wool, crisp white shirts, watches that caught the chandelier light like small suns. Their voices were low, controlled, dangerous. I should have kept walking. I should have refilled the glasses and disappeared back into the ER corridors where I belonged. But something held me frozen. Maybe it was the way the boy's tiny legs swung happily, oblivious to the shadows around him. Maybe it was the ache inside me, the secret terror that had been growing for weeks, the faint nausea I couldn't afford to acknowledge, the fear that I might be carrying a child I had no means to feed. A catering server hurried past me, silver tray balanced high with a dozen champagne flutes. Her heel caught on a tiny ridge in the marble, nothing more than a careless grout line housekeeping had missed. Time stretched, thick and slow. The tray tilted. Crystal caught the light and became a storm of glittering knives falling straight toward the child. He looked up, dark eyes wide, toy truck frozen mid-motion. The men at the table were already moving, but they were seated too far, suits too tailored for sudden speed. No one would reach him in time. I didn't think. Thought was a luxury for people who had something left to lose. The pitcher slipped from my fingers, iced tea exploding across the marble in a dark flood. 3 strides. That was all it took to cross the distance between invisible and unforgettable. I threw myself over the boy, arms curling protectively around his small frame, back arched to the glittering cascade. The first flute shattered against my shoulder blade like a white-hot hammer. Pain exploded, stealing my breath. Then another and another, sharp kisses of glass embedding deep, tearing fabric, tearing skin. Champagne soaked through my scrubs, mixing with something warmer, thicker. Blood. Mine. Definitely mine. The boy screamed beneath me, the sound muffled against my chest, and I held him tighter, absorbing every impact, every shard that bit like teeth. My body trembled with shock and adrenaline, but I did not move, did not uncover him until the last piece had fallen and the atrium erupted in gasps, shouts, scraping chairs. Silence fell, heavy and stunned. Then a voice, low, dark, edged with a command that silenced even the chaos. Don't move. Firm hands settled on my shoulders, careful to avoid the worst damage. Look at me. The words were quiet, but they pulled like gravity. Every survival instinct screamed to run, to hide, to vanish back into the shadows where poor girls belonged. Yet I lifted my head. The man kneeling beside us stole whatever breath the glass had left. Fair-skinned, sharp-jawed, with dark hair touched by silver at the temples and eyes like midnight storms. A faint scar traced from his left eyebrow into his hairline, a silver thread against flawless tailoring. His suit had not one speck of spilled champagne, as though even chaos respected him. But it was his gaze that trapped me, burning with an intensity that made the vast atrium shrink to just us. Those eyes should have been cold, calculating, the eyes of a man who bought and sold fear. Instead, they held something raw, violent, tearing at invisible walls inside him. "You're hurt," he said, and it was not a question. His gaze traveled over my face, down to the shards protruding from my shoulder like grotesque ornaments, and something fractured in his expression. Rage so profound the air seemed to crackle, guilt gnawing visibly at the edges of control. "I'm fine," I whispered, voice small, timid, the way poverty had trained me when speaking to anyone who looked like money. My hands shook as I tried to shift, pain lancing through me like fire. Is the little boy all right?" A muscle jumped in his jaw. He glanced down at the child, now wriggling out from beneath me, small hands reaching for my bloodied sleeve with heartbreaking tenderness. "Papa, she saved me. The glass was coming, but she jumped." The man, Papa, went utterly still. Tension radiated from him like heat from summer pavement. Around us, the gala held its collective breath. Security hovered, unsure whether to approach. Donors whispered behind manicured hands. I tried to stand, to fade back into invisibility, but dizziness swept over me, legs buckling under the weight of blood loss and shock. His hand tightened on my arm, gentle, immovable. "What's your name?" The question carried absolute authority, yet beneath it trembled something urgent, almost desperate. "Lily," I managed, throat raw. "Lily Harper." "Lily." He repeated it slowly, as though tasting something precious and forbidden. The way my name shaped in his mouth made it sound like something owned, something protected. "I am Alexander Callahan." The name landed like a stone dropped into deep water. Ripples spread outward, staff paling, donors averting eyes, security straightening with new wariness. Alexander Callahan. The name whispered in boardrooms and back alleys alike. The man who owned half of Chicago's shadows and enough legitimate towers downtown to pretend at daylight. Fair-skinned heir to an empire built on power and fear. I had thrown myself over the son of the most dangerous man in the city. I need to clean this up," I stammered, trying to pull away, terror rising sharp and cold. "I'm sorry for the mess." "You need a hospital," he corrected, voice steel wrapped in silk. He rose fluidly, towering, yet his arm slid around my waist to steady me when the world tilted. Warmth seeped through his suit, expensive cologne, leather, something darker beneath. My malnourished body swayed toward that solid strength without permission. "Sir, really, I have insurance. Sort of." The lie died as his eyes met mine again, dark and inescapable. "You saved my son," he said quietly, yet every ear strained to hear. "You put yourself between him and harm without a thought for the cost. Whatever life you had before this moment, your plans, your struggles, it's changed now, Lily Harper. I pay my debts, and this debt," his voice roughened, inner conflict flashing like lightning behind the storm. "This debt I will repay for as long as it takes." It should have sounded like gratitude. Instead, it sounded like a vow carved in stone, or a chain disguised as salvation. Behind him, the little boy, Maddie, clutched his toy truck and smiled up at me with gap-toothed trust, unaware that his father's words had just wrapped around me like velvet restraints. Pain throbbed in rhythm with my pulse, each beat reminding me I had been noticed, marked, seen by eyes that carried both salvation and ruin. Alexander extended his hand, elegant fingers, platinum watch glinting, a single signet ring bearing a crest older than my entire existence. I stared at it, trembling. Taking it would mean crossing a line I could never uncross. But my legs would no longer hold me, and the floor seemed to sway like a ship in storm. What choice did a destitute girl have when the most powerful man in Chicago offered his hand? I placed my bloodied, shaking fingers in his. His grip closed with finality, the quiet snap of a lock sliding home. As he guided me toward the private exit where black SUVs waited like silent sentinels, I caught glimpses of the life I was leaving. Spilled iced tea pooling on marble, shattered crystal glittering like fallen stars, donors watching with wide eyes. My worn sneakers left faint red prints on the pristine floor, evidence that the invisible had bled in their world. And in Alexander Callahan's tormented gaze, I saw the first flicker of something fierce and impossible. Remorse for the danger his life invited. Violent conflict at the walls crumbling inside him. And beneath it all, an overwhelming, burning surge that looked dangerously like the beginning of love. The back of Alexander Callahan's black SUV smelled like money I had never touched. Rich leather, warmed by hidden seat heaters, faint traces of expensive cologne that lingered like a promise. I sat rigid against the plush cushion, acutely aware of every inch of space between poverty and power. Maddie pressed against my uninjured side, his small hand clutching the torn sleeve of my blood-soaked scrubs as though I might vanish if he let go. Alexander sat opposite us, body angled toward me, with a focus that made the spacious interior feel suddenly too small. Outside the tinted windows, Chicago's October night rushed past in streaks of gold and shadow. Magnificent skyscrapers I had only ever seen from the cracked sidewalks of the South Side. I had never ridden in a car like this. My usual commute was the CTA bus, standing room only, clutching a worn transfer slip while cold wind whipped through broken doors. Now the ride was silent, smooth, heated. The contrast clawed at my chest, a violent reminder of how far I had fallen and how impossibly high I was suddenly lifted. Pain throbbed in my back with every breath, glass still embedded like cruel stars. Blood seeped steadily, warm and sticky, soaking the seat beneath me. I tried to shift away, horrified at the thought of staining leather that probably cost more than my entire existence. "I'm sorry," I whispered, voice soft and trembling, the way it always became when speaking to anyone who looked like they could end my world with a phone call. "I'm getting blood on your seat." Alexander's eyes snapped to mine, dark and fierce. Something tore across his expression, gnawing remorse so sharp it seemed to physically hurt him. "Don't," he said quietly, the single word carrying steel and pleading at once. "Don't apologize for saving my son." Maddie looked up at me with wide, trusting eyes. "Does it hurt bad?" he asked, small fingers brushing my arm with heartbreaking gentleness. "A little," I admitted, forcing a smile through the fire in my shoulders, anything to keep the fear from his face. Inside, dizziness swirled, blood loss, shock, the surreal weight of where I was and who held me captive with nothing more than gratitude. Alexander leaned forward slightly, elbows on knees, gaze never leaving me. "Most people would have looked away," he said, voice low, almost wondering. "They would have told themselves it wasn't their problem. Why didn't you?" The question hung heavy, deceptively simple. I felt the trap in it, the way honesty might reveal too much. But pain and exhaustion had stripped my usual careful walls. "He's a child," I answered quietly. "That's reason enough." Something flickered across his face, surprise, recognition, and then a deeper, more violent conflict. His jaw tightened as though fighting an internal war. "You have children of your own?" "No." The word came out harder than intended, carrying years of loneliness and the fresh terror of the secret growing inside me. A child I might be carrying, alone, with no money, no family, no future beyond more endless shifts and cold nights. "No one will worry about you tonight," he said, not a question. The implications twisted in my stomach like a knife. "I should call my landlord," I murmured, panic rising. "Rent was due 3 days ago. He'll change the locks if... Your rent is paid. Alexander pulled out his phone, typed swiftly with one thumb. For the next 2 years. Consider it the first payment on a debt that can never truly be settled. My mouth went dry. You can't. I can. He pocketed the phone, gaze unwavering. And I will. Your medical bills, your lost wages, every consequence of tonight, gone. Your supervisor has been informed you are on indefinite paid leave. Tears burned sudden and hot. Paid leave. I had never had paid leave. I had worked through fevers, through grief, through nights when hunger made my hands shake holding IV lines. The unfairness of it all, the absurd, overwhelming generosity from a man whose world I did not belong in, tore at my heart with violent confusion. Suspicion warred with desperate, shameful relief. The SUV slowed, gliding through wrought iron gates that opened without touch. The driveway curved through manicured grounds lit by subtle landscape lights, trees wrapped in tiny white bulbs like something from a dream I could never afford. The mansion rose ahead, modern glass and stone softened by classical columns, 3 stories of quiet, intimidating elegance. Security cameras disguised as garden ornaments watched our approach. I had never seen a house this large. My entire apartment could fit in the foyer. Alexander stepped out first, then reached back to help me. My legs buckled the moment weight returned, adrenaline fleeing, leaving only pain and shock. He caught me instantly, arms sliding around my waist with a gentleness that contradicted everything I had heard about the Callahan name. He smelled of warmth and danger, and my traitorous body leaned into him because standing alone was impossible. I can walk, I protested weakly, mortified at my helplessness. Humor me, he murmured near my ear, breath stirring my hair. The closeness sent unwelcome sparks through the numbness. Inside, the foyer soared. Marble floors, dark wood paneling, artwork on walls that belonged in museums. A woman in her 60s appeared, elegant in a black dress, pearls at her throat. Her eyes widened at my bloodied state. Sir, what? Maddie is unharmed, Alexander cut in. This is Lily Harper. She saved him. Prepare the blue guest suite. She'll be staying. My heart stuttered. No, I can't. I have work tomorrow. What you have, he said, guiding me toward a sweeping staircase, is multiple deep lacerations and shock that will drop you soon. What you need is care. Argue tomorrow when you're not bleeding on my marble. He carried most of my weight up the stairs, mindful of every wince. The guest suite was larger than my entire apartment, king bed with sheets that whispered luxury, windows overlooking snow-dusted gardens, ensuite bathroom gleaming with marble and gold fixtures. A man in a white coat waited with a medical bag. Private physician, I realized dimly. Alexander lowered me carefully to the bed's edge. Dr. Ellison will remove the glass and stitch you. I'll stay. I'll need to cut the scrubs away, the doctor said gently. Heat flooded my cheeks. My bra beneath was threadbare, washed until thin. I had no dignity left to protect. Alexander met my eyes. I'll turn around, he promised. But he did not leave the room. As the doctor worked, pain flared fresh and bright. I bit my lip until I tasted blood, refusing to cry out. Then warm fingers wrapped around mine. Alexander, kneeling beside the bed without sound, thumb tracing soothing circles on my knuckles. Look at me, he commanded softly. Not at what he's doing, at me. I obeyed, drowning in those dark eyes that held secrets and guilt and something growing fiercer by the second. The pain became background to the storm in his gaze. Remorse for the violence his life invited, violent conflict at the walls crumbling, and beneath it all, an overwhelming surge of feeling that looked terrifyingly like possession. Tell me about yourself, Lily Harper, he said, voice rough with restrained emotion. Where are you from? Here, I gasped as glass slid free. Southside, born and raised. Your family? Tears spilled despite my will. Gone. Car accident when I was 19. Been alone since. The confession pulled more from me. Community college dreams abandoned for bills, endless shifts, nights too cold to sleep. Each truth felt like stripping bare before a king. "And what did you want?" he asked, thumb never ceasing its gentle circles. "Before tonight." I laughed, broken and wet. To matter. To be someone people remembered. The admission burned with shame. Stupid, right? "Not stupid," he said fiercely. "Universal. We all want to matter. I built an empire. You saved a child. Which do you think lasts longer?" The question shook me to the core. His eyes held mine, and I saw it clearly, the passionate, burning surge rising like a tide, tearing at his careful control. Love, impossible and immediate, violent in its intensity. The doctor finished, bandaged, and left with quiet instructions. Alexander helped me into a silk shirt softer than anything I had ever touched. His own, I realized, sleeves rolled to fit my smaller frame. His knuckles brushed my collarbone deliberately, claiming. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered, voice cracking. He stilled, cupping my face with devastating tenderness. "Because you jumped without hesitation. Because in a world of calculation, you led with your heart." His thumb traced my cheek. How could I not protect something so rare? I did not belong here. I knew it with every aching bone. Yet, as he tucked me into sheets that smelled of lavender and safety, promising I was safe tonight, something inside me fractured, suspicion giving way to a desperate, terrifying hope. Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing the grounds in white silence. Inside Alexander Callahan's fortress, the poorest girl in Chicago slept under the watchful eyes of the most powerful man in the city. And in his tormented heart, a love fierce enough to burn worlds had already taken root. Morning light filtered through heavy silk curtains, soft and golden, the kind of light that belonged to people who never worried about utility shutoff notices. I woke slowly, disoriented by the absence of cold wind whistling through cracked windows and the distant wail of sirens that usually greeted me on the south side. For a moment I lay still, afraid to move, afraid the luxurious bed and warm blankets would dissolve like a cruel dream. Pain brought reality crashing back, my back a map of fire where glass had kissed skin. Bandages pulled tight with every breath. I was wearing Alexander Callahan's silk shirt, sleeves rolled to my elbows, the fabric still carrying faint traces of his cologne. The memory of his fingers buttoning it last night, of knuckles brushing my collarbone with deliberate care, sent heat flooding my cheeks even now. I sat up gingerly, dizziness swirling. The room spun for a heartbeat before settling. On the nightstand waited a silver tray, fresh coffee steaming in fine china, warm croissants, sliced fruit arranged like artwork. Beside it, a note in strong, slanted handwriting. "Eat. Dr. Ellison will check your bandages at 10. AC." My stomach growled traitorously. I had not eaten properly in days, maybe weeks. The croissants looked impossibly buttery, the fruit glistening with sweetness I could scarcely remember. Tears pricked, sudden and humiliating. I was 28 years old, a registered nurse who saved lives every shift, and here I was, crying over breakfast because someone had thought to feed me. I ate slowly, shame and gratitude warring inside me. Each bite tasted like charity I did not deserve. When the door opened softly, I startled, nearly dropping the coffee. The woman from last night entered. 60s, elegant black dress, pearls glowing against her throat. Her eyes softened at my flinch. "Miss Harper, I'm Mrs. Agnes Whitmore, the housekeeper. Mr. Callahan asked me to bring fresh clothes." She opened the walk-in closet. My breath caught. Rows of jeans, sweaters, dresses, all in my size, tags still attached from stores I had only ever window shopped. Shoes lined the lower shelf. Sneakers, boots, heels I would never have dared wear. Thousands of dollars hanging where my entire wardrobe was 3 pairs of scrubs and 1 thrift store coat. How? When? I whispered, voice small. Mr. Callahan is very efficient when motivated, Mrs. Whitmore said with the faintest smile. He had his assistants work through the night. If anything needs tailoring, we'll arrange it. I touched a soft cashmere sweater, fingers trembling. The fabric was warmer than any blanket I had owned in years. Suspicion coiled tight in my chest. Why would a man like him do this for a stranger? Yet, beneath the fear, something dangerous bloomed. The shameful, desperate wish to believe I mattered enough for this kindness. Mrs. Whitmore hesitated. He's been checking on you every hour since dawn. Maddie, too. The boy is quite taken with his hero. Hero. The word twisted like a knife. I was no hero. I was a broke nurse who had acted on instinct and now found herself in a gilded cage. I showered carefully, keeping bandages dry, then dressed in jeans and the cashmere sweater that fit like they had been made for me. Because, of course, they nearly had. When I emerged, Alexander waited in the hallway, leaning against the wall with arms crossed. He straightened the moment he saw me, dark eyes sweeping over the new clothes with something fiercely satisfied. You look... He stopped, jaw tightening as though words failed him. Better. The intensity in his gaze made my pulse stutter. Last night's restrained passion had not faded. If anything, it burned hotter in daylight. Remorse still shadowed his features, gnawing guilt that his world had spilled blood on an innocent. Thank you, I said softly, politely, the way poverty had taught me. For the clothes, for everything. But I should go home soon. I have shifts. You're not going anywhere until you're healed, he said, voice quiet but absolute. He gestured for me to walk with him. I obeyed, legs unsteady. We descended a grand staircase into a sunlit breakfast room overlooking snow-dusted gardens. Maddie sat at a long mahogany table, swinging his legs, toy truck making engine sounds on fine linen. He lit up when he saw me. Lily, you're awake! The boy scrambled down and hugged my legs carefully, mindful of bandages. My heart cracked open at the innocent affection. I knelt awkwardly, wincing, and hugged him back. He smelled like baby shampoo and safety, things I had never known how to give. Alexander watched us, expression unreadable yet raw. Something violent flickered behind his eyes, conflict so intense it seemed to physically pain him. We ate together, Maddie chattering about school and trucks, Alexander quiet but attentive, refilling my coffee before I could ask. The normalcy felt absurd against the opulence. Crystal glasses of orange juice, silver platters of eggs and bacon, fresh flowers in a vase worth more than my rent. Then his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen and every trace of softness vanished. Jaw hardened, eyes turned arctic. Excuse me, he said, rising. But he paused, looking at me. Stay inside today, please. The please carried weight heavier than any command. Minutes later, raised voices echoed from the hall, low, urgent, male. I crept to the door, heart pounding. Confirmed, boss. The tray didn't fall. Someone loosened the bracket during setup. Batal family signature. Same method they used on the port commissioner last year. Alexander's voice was deadly calm. They targeted my son in a public hospital gala. Find who gave the order, quietly. My blood ran cold. Not an accident. An assassination attempt. Because of who his father was. I backed away, dizziness returning. The room tilted. I had saved Maddie from deliberate murder and painted a target on myself. Alexander returned, face composed but eyes storm dark. He saw my pallor and crossed the room in 3 strides. You heard. I nodded, throat tight. It wasn't an accident. No. He took my hands, warm, strong, trembling faintly with restrained fury. By saving Maddie in such a public way, you've become known, connected to me. That makes you a target too. Terror flooded me, sharp, numbing. I didn't know. I know. His thumbs stroked my knuckles, grounding and possessive. Your old life, the apartment, the shifts, the constant struggle, it's over. Not because I wish it, but because my enemies will use anything to hurt me, including you. Tears spilled hot and sudden. I can't pay for this. I have nothing. You have everything now, he said fiercely. My protection, my resources, my... He stopped, inner torment flashing raw. My gratitude is only the beginning, Lily. You took glass meant for my son. There is no price high enough. Outside, tires crunched on gravel, multiple vehicles arriving. Alexander glanced out the window, expression turning lethal. Stay here with Agnes and Maddie, he ordered softly. Lock the doors. He left with 4 armed men, black SUVs speeding down the drive. I watched from the window, heart tearing. Hours later, my phone, the cracked ancient one I had forgotten I still carried, buzzed with a restricted number. Against every instinct, I answered. A distorted voice. Tell Callahan the girl who played hero is now leverage. Vitale sends regards. The line died. I dropped the phone, legs giving out. The unfairness crushed me. Poor my whole life, finally doing something brave, and now hunted for it. Alexander returned at dusk, suit jacket gone, white shirt sleeves rolled, knuckles bruised but no blood. His eyes found me immediately, relief and guilt warring. They tried to block the gate, he said quietly. A message. I sent one back. He knelt before me where I sat trembling on the sofa. You're safe here, I swear it. But as he pulled me gently into his arms, careful of bandages, I felt the violent storm inside him. Remorse that his darkness had touched me, passionate love surging unstoppable, tearing at the walls he had built around a heart that had forgotten how to feel. And in that quiet, condensed stillness, with snow falling outside and his heartbeat strong beneath my ear, I understood. My desperate, impoverished life had ended the moment I jumped. A new one, terrifying, impossible, burning with his fierce devotion, had just begun. Days blurred into a strange, hushed rhythm inside Alexander Callahan's Lake Forest mansion. October deepened outside the tall windows, leaves turning fiery red and gold, early snow dusting the manicured lawns. But inside, time felt suspended in warmth and quiet luxury I had never known. My wounds healed slowly. Dr. Ellison visited daily, changing bandages with professional care, murmuring that the scars would fade but never fully disappear. Each time he left, I stood before the full-length mirror in the guest suite, lifting the silk shirt to stare at the angry red lines crisscrossing my back. Badges of an act that had changed everything. Proof that I had once mattered enough to bleed. I wandered the house like a ghost, afraid to touch anything, afraid to believe this was real. The kitchen pantry held more food than I had seen in years. Fresh fruit in bowls, shelves of cereals and pastas I could once only dream of buying. Agnes caught me staring one morning and gently pressed a warm muffin into my hand. Eat, child. You're still too thin. Tears threatened again at the simple kindness. Thin. That word had defined me for so long. Thin paycheck, thin blanket, thin hope. Maddie became my anchor. The boy followed me everywhere, toy truck always in hand, begging for stories about the hospital or asking me to color with him at the massive oak table in the sunroom. His laughter echoed through halls that must have been silent too long. I read him books from the nursery shelves, picture books with glossy pages and happy endings I had never owned as a child. When he fell asleep against my side one afternoon, small head heavy on my lap, something inside me cracked wide open. Maternal longing I had buried under survival surged, fierce and painful. Alexander watched us often from doorways, silent and intense. His presence filled rooms before he entered them. I felt his gaze like warmth on my skin, possessive, tormented, burning with feelings he barely restrained. At meals he sat close, refilling my plate before I could protest, asking quiet questions about my favorite foods, my childhood, my dreams. Each answer felt like giving pieces of myself to a man who could crush them or treasure them forever. One evening, as snow flurried outside the library windows, he found me curled in a leather armchair with a book of poetry I had pulled from his shelves. Maddie slept upstairs, exhausted from an afternoon building forts with blankets that cost more than my old mattress. Alexander lowered himself into the opposite chair, firelight casting shadows across his sharp features. "You're feeling better," he observed, voice low. I nodded, setting the book aside. "The pain is duller now. Thank you, for the doctor, for everything." He leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes never leaving mine. "Tell me the truth, Lily. How are you really?" The question undid me. No one had asked that in years. Tears welled before I could stop them. "I don't know how to be here," I whispered, voice trembling. "This house, these clothes, the food, it's all so much. I keep waiting to wake up back in my apartment with the broken heater and the eviction notice taped to the door." His jaw clenched, remorse flashing raw. "You deserve more than that cold room and endless shifts." "I don't," I said, ashamed. "I'm nobody. I was nobody." "You were never nobody." His words carried fierce conviction. "You are the woman who threw herself over my son without a thought for her own safety. That makes you extraordinary." Silence stretched, thick with unspoken things. Then, softly, "I had the apartment cleared today. Your things are in storage. The lease is ended." Shock numbed me. You went into my home?" I had it done respectfully. Guilt shadowed his eyes. "There wasn't much. A few clothes, some books, a photo of your parents. I brought the photo here. It's on the dresser in your room." Tears spilled hot down my cheeks. That shoebox studio, peeling linoleum, single hot plate, mattress on the floor stained from leaks, had been my entire world. Humiliating in its poverty, yet mine. Now even that was gone. "I'm sorry," he said roughly, "but you can't go back. Not while the Vitali family is hunting connections to me." Fear coiled cold in my stomach. "How long?" "As long as it takes." He reached across the space between chairs, taking my hand. His palm engulfed mine, warm, calloused, despite wealth, trembling faintly. "I will keep you safe, Lily, you and Maddie both." The promise tore at my heart, suspicion warring with desperate need. I had been alone so long, protected by no one. Later that night, pain and nausea woke me. I stumbled to the ensuite bathroom, gripping the marble counter as the world spun. "Doctor." Ellison had warned about possible delayed shock, but this felt different, deeper, insistent. When the wave passed, I stared at my hollow cheeks, shadowed eyes, body still too thin despite days of real meals, and lower, a faint swell I could no longer deny. Pregnant. The word crashed through me like glass all over again. One, broke, now carrying a child from a fleeting encounter I had tried to forget. How could I raise a baby on a nurse's salary that barely fed one? How could I bring a child into cold nights and empty cupboards? Sobs tore free, muffled against a towel so no one would hear. I slid to the heated tile floor, arms wrapped around my middle, rocking in silent agony. Poor, powerless, terrified. The door opened softly. Alexander stood silhouetted, concern etched deep. He had heard, despite my efforts. "Lily?" One stride, and he knelt, gathering me against his chest without hesitation. "What's wrong? The wounds?" I shook my head, crying harder. Words spilled in broken whispers. The nausea, the fear, the secret I had carried alone. I'm pregnant, I finally choked out. I didn't know for sure until here. I can't do this alone. I have nothing, no savings, no family, no way to... His arms tightened, body rigid with shock and something fiercer. You're not alone anymore, voice rough with emotion. Not you, not the child. I pulled back, searching his face through tears. You don't owe me this. You've already... I owe you everything, he interrupted, cupping my face with trembling hands. Firelight from the bedroom beyond gilded his features. Remorse, guilt, and beneath it all, love surging unstoppable, passionate and burning. Let me take care of you, both of you. The offer tore my heart in two, suspicion screaming it was too much, too fast. Desperate hope whispering, maybe, just maybe, I could finally stop surviving alone. He carried me back to bed, tucking blankets around me with reverence, then sat beside me until exhaustion claimed me. His hand rested protectively over the faint curve of my stomach, claiming what was not yet his, yet already cherished. Outside, snow fell thicker, blanketing the world in silence. Inside, in the warm glow of a bedside lamp worth more than my old rent, the poorest woman in Chicago slept under the fierce guardianship of the city's most powerful man, whose heart, once armored against the world, now burned with a love so intense it threatened to consume them both. The days grew shorter, the October nights colder, but inside Alexander Callahan's mansion, the world felt deceptively safe. I moved through sunlit rooms and shadowed hallways like a woman learning to breathe again, slowly, carefully, afraid the air might vanish. Maddie's laughter became the soundtrack of my healing. Small feet pattering after me, demands for one more story, one more cookie from Agnes's endless supply. I read to him until my voice grew hoarse, tucked him in at night with kisses on his soft curls, and felt a maternal ache so deep it terrified me. This child was not mine, yet my heart had already claimed him. Alexander watched it all with eyes that grew stormier by the day. He lingered longer at breakfast, asked quieter questions, brushed my hand when passing coffee with a touch that lingered too long. The passionate surge I had glimpsed the night I confessed my pregnancy had not faded. It burned hotter, restrained only by iron will and the fear of frightening me away. I saw the war inside him every time our gazes met, gnawing remorse that his darkness endangered us, violent conflict between the man who commanded Chicago's shadows and the one desperate to shield us from them. One gray afternoon, while Maddie napped and Alexander was away handling business, my old phone buzzed on the nightstand. I had meant to throw it away. Cracked screen, prepaid minutes long expired, but habit made me keep it. Unknown number. Against every warning bell, I answered. Silence first, then breathing, deliberate, mechanical. The girl who thinks she's a hero, a distorted male voice said. You should have stayed invisible, Nurse Harper. Now you're a complication. Ice flooded my veins. Who is this? You put yourself between Callahan's brat and our message. Noble. Stupid. A pause. Tell your protector complications disappear in our world. Even his money can't buy back what we'll take. The line went dead. I dropped the phone, hands shaking so violently it clattered to the hardwood. The room spun, dizziness crashing over me like a wave. I stumbled to the bed, pressing palms to my stomach where the tiny life grew, terror sharp and numbing. They knew my name, my old number, my connection. One act of instinct, and now hunted like prey. Agnes found me there, pale and trembling. I whispered what happened. Her face tightened, but she stayed calm. Mr. Callahan will handle this. Stay inside. He returned at dusk, snowflakes melting on his dark coat. The moment he saw my face, he crossed the room in long strides, kneeling before the chair where I sat curled. "Lily, what is it?" I repeated the call, voice breaking. His expression turned lethal, rage barely leashed, guilt carving deeper lines around his eyes. "They tracked your old phone," he said grimly. "I should have taken it sooner." He pulled me gently into his arms, careful of healing wounds. "You're safe here. This house is a fortress." But even as he spoke, alarms blared, low, urgent. Lights flickered to red emergency glow. His phone exploded with calls. Marco's voice over speaker. "Breach at South Perimeter. 4 vehicles, armed. They're using inside schematics. Someone talked." Alexander's body went rigid. "Traitor." "Working on it. Get to the safe floor." He lifted me effortlessly, carrying me down corridors now lit by backup power. Guards materialized, weapons drawn but held low. Maddie, wide-eyed in Agnes's arms, reached for me as we passed. "Lily?" "It's okay, sweetheart," I managed, though my heart tore at his fear. We descended to a lower level, concrete and steel, hidden doors sealing behind us. A command center. Monitors showing snowy grounds, infrared figures moving with military precision toward the house. Alexander set me on a reinforced couch, hand lingering on my cheek. "Stay here. Biometric locks. Nothing gets through." "Where are you going?" Panic sharpened my voice. "To end this tonight." His eyes burned, fierce protection, violent remorse. "I brought this danger to you. I will finish it." He kissed my forehead, hard, desperate, then turned to Marco. "Protect them with your life." The door sealed. Monitors showed chaos. Black SUVs blocking the drive, masked men advancing. Gunfire cracked distant but unmistakable. I clutched Maddie close as Agnes murmured prayers. Minutes stretched eternal. Then movement on screen. Alexander emerging from a side entrance with 4 men, approaching the intruders directly. No hiding, no fear. The lead masked figure raised a hand. Halt. Words exchanged, too far for audio. Tension thick even through cameras. Alexander spoke, posture commanding. The leader responded, gesturing sharply. A standoff, bold, unexpected, in the open driveway under floodlights. My breath caught. One wrong move. Alexander stepped closer, voice carrying faintly over external mics. "Touch my family, you declare war you cannot win." The leader laughed, distorted, arrogant. More words, threats about leverage, about me. Alexander's response was quiet thunder. Monitors caught fragments. "She carries my child. Harm her, and nothing saves you." Shock numbed me. He had claimed it publicly, my baby as his. The leader lunged, suddenly, weapon raised. Alexander's men moved, disarming, subduing without shots fired. A tense scuffle, then the intruders retreated, forced back to vehicles under threat. Alexander stood unmoving in snow, watching them flee. Victory, but his shoulders carried new weight, guilt that his enemies had come so close. He returned minutes later, coat dusted white, knuckles bruised. The moment the door opened, he came straight to me, pulling me into his arms despite Agnes and guards watching. "They're gone," he whispered against my hair, "for tonight." I clung to him, tears soaking his shirt. They knew where to hit, someone inside. His body trembled, rage and remorse colliding. "I'll find the traitor, root them out." He pulled back, cupping my face, eyes burning with passionate intensity. "I almost lost you both tonight. I won't let it happen again." Maddie wriggled between us, small arms hugging our legs. In that reinforced room, surrounded by steel and danger, the 3 of us held each other, fragile family forged in threat and love. Later, upstairs again, snow still falling thick outside, Alexander sat beside my bed. He took my hand, thumb tracing veins still too visible from years of not enough. "I should have protected you better," he said, voice raw. "My world, it destroys what I love." The confession tore at him, inner conflict violent, guilt consuming. I squeezed his fingers. "You came back. You stopped them." "Not soon enough." His free hand moved to my stomach, resting gently over the slight curve. "This child, our child, will never know the cold you endured. Neither will you, not ever again." The promise burned with love so fierce it scared me. Suspicion lingered, but the surge in his eyes, the overwhelming, passionate devotion, drowned it. Outside, the estate lay quiet under fresh snow, guards doubled, traitor hunt beginning. Inside, in the warm glow of a single lamp, the poorest woman Chicago had ever overlooked lay protected in the arms of its most powerful man, whose heart, torn by remorse and ignited by love, beat only for her and the family she had gifted him without knowing. The snow fell heavier that night, thick flakes blanketing the estate in deceptive peace. I sat in the reinforced command room long after the breach ended, Matty finally asleep against my side, his small breath steady despite the chaos hours earlier. Agnes had taken him to bed, but I remained on the couch, staring at monitors now dark, heart still racing. Alexander had not returned to me yet. He was somewhere in the house, interrogating staff, hunting the traitor who had fed schematics to the Vitale family. His absence felt like a physical ache, safety tied to his presence now, a dependence that shamed and terrified me. My old phone lay shattered on the table. Marco had removed the battery after the threatening call, confirming it had been tracked. Another unfair twist. The one possession tying me to my old life had become the chain enemies used to reach me. Footsteps echoed, urgent. Marco burst in, face grim. "Miss Harper, we're moving you to secondary location, now." "What's happening?" Fear sharpened my voice. "Second wave, smaller, smarter. They're inside the outer perimeter again." His hand hovered near his weapon. "Boss is handling the front, but they're trying lower access points. We can't risk them reaching this level." Dizziness hit. Blood loss, memory, pregnancy nausea, pure terror. I stood too fast, world tilting. Marco caught my arm. "Easy. Stay close." We moved through hidden corridors, concrete tunnels lit by emergency strips, cold air biting despite the mansion's luxury above. Guards flanked us, footsteps echoing. Gunfire cracked distant, sharp reports that made me flinch with every one. "Where's Alexander?" I gasped, clutching my stomach protectively. 10 minutes out, Marco said. "He drew the main force away, street confrontation on the North Road, bought us time." My heart tore, imagining him facing armed men in snow, all because I had jumped that night. We reached an underground garage, rows of armored black vehicles gleaming under fluorescent lights. Marco steered me toward the nearest SUV. "Get in. We'll loop to safe house until..." Explosion rocked the far wall, concrete showering, smoke billowing. The entrance blasted inward. 3 masked men emerged, weapons raised, moving with cold precision. Marco and guards returned fire, controlled bursts, enclosed space amplifying thunder until my ears rang. "Get in the car!" Marco shouted, shoving me toward the open door. I stumbled forward, back screaming as stitches pulled. A hand caught my arm, wrong grip, too rough. I turned to find dead eyes behind a mask, barrel pressed cold to my temple. "Stop shooting or she dies," the man called, voice accented. Gunfire ceased instantly. Marco froze, weapon raised but useless, expression murderous. "You don't want this," Marco growled. "You have no idea what Callahan will do." "Callahan's busy," the man said flatly, "and the girl's insurance now. Weren't planning on the boss having a guardian angel." The barrel dug harder. Pain and fear numbed me, dizziness returning, vision tunneling. I thought of the child inside me, of Maddie safe upstairs, of Alexander out there fighting because of me. "Do it," I said quietly to Marco, voice breaking. "Drop them. I'm not dying for pride." "Miss Harper, please." Tears spilled. Poor, powerless again, destined to be leveraged because I had dared to matter. Weapons clattered to concrete. The man smiled coldly. "Smart girl. Walk calmly or I shoot knees and drag you." He pulled me backward through smoke toward a waiting van. I caught Marco's eyes one last time. "Promise there. We'll find you." Then darkness swallowed me as I was thrown into the van like discarded cargo. My head cracked against metal floor, stars bursting, pain exploding. Doors slammed, engine roared. Through ringing ears, the man spoke into a phone. "We have Callahan's new pet, bringing her to the Calumet warehouse. Let's see what the sun saver's worth." The van lurched into motion, tires crunching snow. I lay curled on cold floor, back bleeding anew, head throbbing, unborn child a fragile weight. Terror crashed, horror that they might harm the baby, anxiety for Maddie alone, fear for Alexander believing me lost. Unfairness crushed me. Poor my whole life, skipping meals, enduring cold, finally finding warmth and love, only to be torn away as punishment for one selfless act. Tears soaked the metal beneath my cheek. I had jumped to save a child. Now I might die for it. The warehouse stank of oil and rust when they dragged me inside hours later. Vast space, concrete stained by years of forgotten industry. They tied me to a metal chair under harsh overhead light, knots professional, tight but not cruel. One guard watched while others prepared. "You're calm," the younger guard observed, lighting a cigarette. "Most would beg." Would it help? My voice came steady despite everything, nurse's training or numbness. He considered. "No, but entertaining." "Sorry to disappoint." Pain lanced my back, stitches torn, blood warm again. He studied me. "You really jumped for the kid, not propaganda." Instinct. I shifted, testing ropes. "He's 5, doesn't deserve his father's enemies." "None of us do," he said quietly, something haunted in his eyes. "But we pay anyway." Before I could respond, doors burst open. Not subtle, dramatic, deliberate. Alexander strode in, surrounded by a dozen men. Even across the space, fury radiated like heat. His suit torn at shoulder, snow melting in his hair, but he moved with lethal purpose. Eyes found me instantly. Relief, possession, love, burning fierce. The leader stepped forward. "Callahan, glad you came." Alexander's voice froze blood. "Release her, now." "Information first. Port routes you took from us." 10 seconds, Alexander said calmly, "or I take everything you have." Standoff. Weapons rose on both sides. My heart tore. Fear for him, for our child, for the love I might never feel again. In the cold warehouse, under harsh light, the poorest girl and the most powerful man faced enemies together, bound by blood, glass, and a love too intense to survive separation. The warehouse on the Calumet docks stood vast and echoing under a single row of harsh overhead lights, the October cold seeping through cracked concrete walls. Snow muffled the world outside, but inside the air crackled with threat. I sat tied to the metal chair, ropes cutting wrists, back throbbing where stitches had torn open again. Blood soaked the borrowed cashmere sweater, warm at first, now cold and sticky. My head ached from the van ride, dizziness coming in waves that blurred the edges of masked figures moving in shadows. The leader, older, gray at temples, weathered confidence, paced slowly, phone in hand. "Callahan will come," he said to his men. "He always does for family." Family. The word twisted in me. I was not family. I was a poor nurse who had acted on instinct and now paid the price. Yet Alexander had claimed me, us, in front of enemies. The child inside me fluttered faintly as if sensing danger. I closed my eyes, silent tears tracking cheeks. Unfair, always unfair. Poor my whole life, finally tasting safety, love, only to be ripped away. Doors burst open with deliberate force. Alexander strode in, a dozen armed men fanning behind him. Snow clung to his dark coat, melting in the warmer air. His suit was torn at the shoulder, shirt spattered with what might have been mud or blood from earlier confrontations. Yet he moved with predatory grace, presence filling the warehouse like midnight claiming day. His eyes found me instantly across the space. Relief flooded them, then possession, then love so fierce it seemed to burn the air. Mine, that look said, and you took what's mine. The leader stepped forward, smiling thinly. Callahan, right on time. Alexander's voice could have frozen the lake outside. You have 30 seconds to release her unharmed. Information first, the man countered. Port District routes. You took them fair and square. Give them back. Everyone walks. Alexander did not blink. 20 seconds. The leader laughed, but tension crept in. You won't risk her. A shot rang out, sharp, precise. The young guard who had spoken to me earlier dropped, clean wound to shoulder. He had reached subtly for a hidden weapon. Alexander's gun smoked faintly. Eyes still locked on the leader. 15 seconds, Alexander said calmly. Next one ends a life. Chaos threatened, the Tali men raising weapons, Callahan's responding. Mexican standoff, firepower enough to level the building. Ropes bit my wrists as I strained instinctively. Heart tore. Fear for Alexander, for our unborn child, for the fragile love blooming in danger. The leader backed toward me, using my chair as shield, barrel pressing cold to my temple again. Stand down or she dies now. Time crystallized. I saw Alexander's jaw tighten, calculations flashing, angles, risks, acceptable losses. Then decision. Everything. I was worth everything. You won't shoot, Alexander said, voice dropping conversational yet deadly. Because the moment you do, negotiation ends. I keep you alive for days, weeks. I dismantle everything you built. Your family untouched, only while she breathes. He stepped forward, men moving in perfect sync. You know my reputation. I don't bluff. The leader's hand trembled faintly. He had miscalculated, thought a woman known only days would be expendable, did not understand some debts transcended strategy. Over comms in Alexander's ear, Marco's voice, strained, broken. Boss, it was me. They threatened my daughter, terminal, experimental treatment only I could access. I fed schematics. I'm sorry. Silence fell heavier than snowfall. Alexander's expression fractured, fury, betrayal, then something deeper, paternal understanding. The same desperation that drove him tonight had driven Marco to treason. The leader sensed weakness. Hear that? Even your inner circle. Shut up, Alexander said quietly. The command snapped, mouths closed. He looked at me, eyes burning with love, remorse, violent conflict. Then subtle signal to his men. Stand down, the leader finally said, defeated, lowering weapon. Weapons down. She's yours. Guns clattered. Alexander crossed the space in heartbeats, kneeling before me. Hands worked ropes with surprising gentleness, mindful of bruises. Are you hurt? Voice rough, intimate for my ears alone. My back, I whispered. Some stitches, but the baby, I know. He helped me stand, arms supporting when legs buckled. They'll pay for every tear. He turned to the leader, shift instant, from tender protector to unforgiving ruler. Marco, he said into comms, you'll live. Treatment for your daughter, paid anonymously, but you're done here. mercy. Unexpected, profound. The leader paled further. You touched what's mine, Alexander continued coldly. In another life, that ends slow. But you recognize defeat. You leave Chicago tonight. Everything here, forfeit. Assets, contacts, profits, mine. The man nodded, broken. Understood. Get out. Vitali men fled like shadows before dawn. Warehouse emptied until only Alexander, his loyal men, and I remained. Silence deafening after threatened violence. He turned back, exhaustion aging him years in moments. You should have gone with Marco to the car. Probably. I swayed, blood loss returning dizziness. He caught me instantly. But I needed to see, I whispered. Who you are, all of it. Understanding dawned in his eyes, respect, love deeper. And do you? That you keep promises, value loyalty, would burn worlds for your children. I looked up, this beautiful, dangerous man who had become my world, and that you consider me worth all this. Because you jumped, he said simply, hand cupping my face. Because you led with heart in a world that punishes it. Thumb traced my cheek, gathering tears. How could I not love someone so brave? Terror, shock, overwhelming surge. Poor girl, suddenly cherished beyond reason. I'm scared, I admitted, voice small. Of you, of this. But I don't want to leave. Brave and terrified, he murmured. Often the same, he offered escape. You can still go. New identity, money, safety. The thought suffocated, back to cold apartments, empty cupboards, invisibility. What if I want to stay? Tears fell harder. Because for once, I matter. With me? Hope raw in his voice. Because of you, truth tore free. I choose you. His expression transformed, relief, possession, love explosive. Then you're mine, Lily Harper, completely, and I protect what's mine. He kissed me there, amid echoes of threat, snow falling outside, tasting of promises forged in danger and devotion, fierce, desperate, eternal. Let's go home, he whispered against my lips. Home. Not mansion, home, as if I had always belonged. In his arms, carried to the waiting SUV, I glanced back at the warehouse one last time. There, the girl who had lived on granola bars and hope bled and nearly broke. Here, someone cherished, protected, loved beyond measure was born. The cost? Blood, fear, every shred of old safety. Worth it. For the man whose heart now beat for me, for Maddie, for the child we would raise together. Some debts could never be repaid. They could only be honored, fiercely, passionately, forever. The ride back to the estate passed in hushed urgency, snow still falling thick and silent beyond the tinted windows of the armored SUV. Alexander held me close on the wide leather seat, my head against his chest, his coat draped over me like a shield. Blood from my reopened wounds had soaked through the borrowed sweater, but his warmth seeped into my chilled bones, chasing away the warehouse cold. Dr. Ellison waited at the gates, medical bag ready, and Alexander carried me inside himself. No gurney, no delegation. Just his arms, strong and careful, as though I weighed nothing and everything at once. Agnes met us in the foyer, face pale but composed. Maddie peeked from the staircase landing, eyes wide until he saw me. He ran down the last steps and into Alexander's free arm, clinging tight. For a long moment, the three of us stood there, bloodied, exhausted, alive, wrapped in a silence more eloquent than words. Dr. Ellison worked in the blue guest suite, now my room, cleaning lacerations, restitching what had torn, murmuring that mother and child were stable, but I needed weeks of true rest. Alexander never left. He sat beside the bed, hand wrapped around mine, thumb tracing slow circles even as the doctor worked. When pain made me bite my lip, his grip tightened, eyes commanding me to look only at him. Afterward, when medicine dulled the edges and Agnes brought broth I could finally keep down, Alexander dismissed everyone with quiet authority. Door closed, fire crackling in the marble hearth, snow tapping gently at tall windows. He pulled the armchair closer, elbows on knees, studying my face with an intensity that stole breath. "Tell me everything they did," he said softly. "Every word, every touch." I shook my head, tears rising. "It doesn't matter now. You came." "It matters," voice rough with restrained fury, "because I need to know how deep the debt runs." The confession spilled then, cold van floor, rough handling, threats against the baby. Each detail carved new lines of torment across his face. When I finished, silence stretched, thick with his inner war. Remorse that his enemies had reached me, violent conflict between vengeance and the mercy he had already shown. He rose suddenly, pacing to the window, back to me. Snow reflected in the glass, framing his silhouette. "I almost lost you tonight," he said, voice breaking for the first time. "Because of who I am, because of the blood on my hands." I pushed up carefully, wincing. "You saved me, again." He turned, eyes raw. "I brought the danger. My world hurts what I love most." Guilt consumed him, tearing visibly. "I should send you away, somewhere safe. New name, money, a life without shadows." The offer hung between us, generous, genuine. He would let me go if I asked. Terror flooded me colder than warehouse concrete. Back to empty apartments, cold wind through cracks, hunger, invisibility. Alone with our child, scraping by on nurse wages that never stretched far enough. The thought suffocated. "No," I whispered, tears spilling. "Please." He crossed the room in 2 strides, kneeling beside the bed. "Lily." "I was invisible before," I said, voice trembling but fierce. "Poor, cold, always one missed shift from eviction. No one saw me. No one cared." I reached for his hand, pressing it to my stomach where life grew. "You see me. You care. This baby will never know hunger because of you. Maddie calls me Lily Mama already. I matter here." His breath caught, love surging, overwhelming, passionate, burning away restraint. "You matter more than my empire, more than breath." "Then let me stay." Tears fell faster. "Not because I'm trapped, because I choose this, choose you." Conflict tore him, joy and terror colliding. He bowed his head, forehead resting against our joined hands on my stomach. "I don't deserve you," he whispered, voice raw. "But God help me, I can't let you go." He climbed carefully onto the bed, gathering me against him, mindful of wounds, yet needing closeness like air. I curled into his warmth, head on his chest, listening to the fierce beat of a heart that now belonged to me. "Sleep," he murmured, fingers stroking my hair. "I'll watch over you." I did, deep, dreamless, safe for the first time in years. Days became weeks of quiet healing. Dr. Ellison enforced bed rest. Alexander enforced it more strictly. Meals appeared like magic, nutritious, delicious, endless. My body filled out slowly, cheeks less hollow, strength returning. The baby grew, movements fluttering reassurance. Alexander was everywhere, reading to Maddie and me in the sunroom, bringing fresh flowers from the greenhouse, sitting hours just holding my hand. Conversations deepened, his childhood losses, the wife taken too young, years of armored loneliness. My own, parents gone, endless shifts, nights too cold for hope. Each truth stripped us bare, binding tighter. One afternoon, snow melting into early spring promise beyond windows, he entered carrying a small velvet box. My heart stuttered. He knelt beside the bed, formal suit discarded for soft sweater, vulnerability in every line. "I wanted to wait until you were stronger," he said quietly, "but I can't wait anymore." He opened the box, diamond ring, simple yet flawless, catching firelight. "Marry me, Lily Harper, not because of debt or danger, because I love you with everything I am, because you and Maddie and this child are my world now." Tears blurred him. Poor girl, once invisible, malnourished, desperate, now proposed to by Chicago's most powerful man on his knees. "Yes," I whispered, voice breaking. "Always yes." He slid the ring on, hand trembling, then kissed me, slow, reverent, then deepening into passion restrained too long, fierce, consuming, promising forever. Later, wrapped in his arms, watching snow turn to rain, I understood. The girl who had thrown herself on glass had not just saved a child, she had saved a man from emptiness. And in return, he had given her everything: safety, family, love so intense it remade her world. Some stories begin in tragedy. Ours began with blood and glass and ended in warmth, rings, and the fierce beat of hearts that had found home. Weeks slipped into months inside the Callahan estate, the harsh Chicago winter softening into tentative spring by early 2025. My body healed under layers of care I had never imagined possible. Scars fading to silver threads across my back, the baby growing strong and active, fluttering like hope made flesh. Alexander's ring glinted on my finger, a constant reminder that the impossible had become real. We planned a quiet wedding for summer, Maddie already practicing his role as ring bearer with solemn 5-year-old pride. Yet peace felt fragile, like thin ice over deep water. Alexander's world still cast long shadows. The Tally loyalists scattered but not silenced. Occasional tense street confrontations, blocked roads, terse exchanges in neutral parking garages, kept his security on edge. He shielded me from most, returning late with bruised knuckles and storm-dark eyes, guilt gnawing deeper each time. "I should end this cleaner," he would murmur against my hair, holding me as if I might vanish. I filled days with small joys, reading to Maddie in the sun-warmed library, helping Agnes bake cookies that smelled like childhood I never had, feeling the baby kick while Alexander pressed reverent kisses to my rounding stomach. Poverty's ghosts lingered, nightmares of cold apartments, empty cupboards, eviction notices. But waking to warmth, to his arms, to full pantries chased them away. One rainy afternoon, Alexander called me to his study, a room of dark wood and leather-bound books I rarely entered. Monitors lined one wall, security feeds flickering. He stood before them, expression unreadable, a still image frozen on the largest screen. "Come here," he said softly. I approached, heart quickening. The image, grainy security footage from a downtown hotel bar 4 months earlier. A woman at the counter, back view, dark hair loose, simple black dress hugging thin frame. Beside her, a man in tailored suit, face obscured but posture unmistakably his. My breath caught. I remembered that night vividly. Rare evening off, drowning loneliness in one overpriced drink after a brutal shift. A stranger had bought the next round, conversation flowing easy and electric. One thing led to another, passionate, anonymous encounter in his hotel suite. I had slipped away before dawn, ashamed of the weakness, never expecting to see him again. The woman wore a delicate silver necklace, simple pendant I still owned, tucked in a drawer upstairs. Alexander turned to me, eyes wide with shock and dawning awe. "That's you." I nodded, throat tight. "I didn't know it was you." He crossed the space slowly, as if afraid I might bolt. 4 months ago, the night before the gala. Voice roughened. The timing. Realization crashed over us simultaneously. The baby. He pulled me gently to the desk chair, sitting me down as dizziness swept in, shock-numbing limbs. "Dr. Ellison ran standard tests when you arrived," he said carefully. "Blood work. I asked for discreet paternity confirmation once you told me you were pregnant. Results came today." He placed a folder in my trembling hands. I opened it with fingers that felt detached. Medical report. DNA match conclusive. The child was his. Seismic. World tilting. The man whose son I had saved without knowing his name had already given me another child in a night of forgotten passion. Tears spilled hot and fast. "I didn't know," I whispered again, voice breaking. "I thought some stranger. I was ashamed. Poor girls don't get to keep nice memories." Alexander dropped to his knees before me, hands cupping my face with reverence. Shock, guilt, joy colliding in his eyes, violent inner conflict tearing him apart. "You carried my child alone," he said, voice cracking, "terrified, broke, thinking you had no one, while remorse consumed him. I let you walk away that morning. I should have found you." I shook my head, sobbing. "How could you? It was one night." One night that changed everything. He pressed his forehead to mine, trembling. "Fate, Lily, cruel and kind at once. You saved Maddie. You carried our daughter. You..." Love surged, overwhelming, passionate, burning away every wall. "You are my miracle." Our daughter. He had already decided, hoped. He kissed me then, desperate, all-consuming, months of restraint shattering, hands gentle on my swollen belly, lips claiming with fierce devotion. I kissed back, tears mixing, poor girl's heart exploding with impossible joy. Later, curled together on the study sofa, rain drumming windows, he held me close. "No more secrets," he murmured. "No more cold nights. You and our children, my everything." The revelation settled like destiny. The woman who had thrown herself on glass for his son had already been bound to him by blood and passion, neither remembered until now. Poverty's humiliation faded further, replaced by belonging so profound it healed old wounds. Outside, spring rain washed winter away. Inside, in the warm circle of his arms, the poorest woman Chicago ever overlooked became mother to the heirs of its most powerful man, and loved with a passion fierce enough to rewrite stars. Spring melted fully into summer, and the Callahan estate bloomed like a dream I once believed impossible. By late August of 2025, my belly rounded beautifully beneath flowing dresses Alexander had flown in from Milan. Soft fabrics that caressed skin no longer thin from hunger. Maddie turned 6 in July, his party a garden wonderland of laughter and light. I stood radiant beside Alexander, hand resting on the curve where our daughter grew strong, feeling for the first time in my life truly, deeply seen. Alexander's love had become my gravity, fierce, constant, burning. He read baby books aloud in the evenings, planned nurseries with the same precision he once reserved for business, whispered promises against my skin that made me tremble. Yet shadows lingered. A final Vitale loyalist, driven by revenge for lost empire, remained at large. Alexander's men hunted quietly, but he shielded me from worry, insisting the threat was minor. One stormy September evening, thunder rolling over Lake Michigan, the unthinkable happened. Alexander's shout echoed as I threw myself between them. The shock cracked like thunder. Pain bloomed hot in my shoulder, spinning me, world tilting into dizziness and numbness. I hit the marble hard, breath stolen, blood warm spreading across white dress. Chaos erupted, guards subduing the intruder, Alexander's roar of rage and terror shaking walls. He dropped beside me, cradling my head, face shattered. "Lily, stay with me. Look at me." Maddie's screams pierced the distance, Agnes pulling him away. I tried to focus on Alexander's eyes, dark, tormented, love and guilt tearing him apart. "I'm okay," I whispered, voice soft, trembling. "The baby?" He pressed a hand gently to my belly, tears falling, first I had ever seen. Both breathing, ambulance coming. Dr. Ellison arrived with emergency team, working frantically in the foyer turned makeshift trauma bay. Bullet clean through shoulder, muscle, no vital organs, baby unharmed. But blood loss and shock took me under. I woke days later in the private wing Alexander had built years ago. Sunlight streaming, monitors beeping soft reassurance. He sat beside the bed, unshaven, eyes red-rimmed, hand never leaving mine. "You're awake," he choked, pressing kisses to my fingers. "The baby?" Fear sharp despite pain. "Perfect." Relief flooded his voice. "Our daughter is strong, like her mother." He bowed his head over our joined hands, body shaking. "I almost lost you both, because of me, my enemies." I touched his cheek weakly. "You didn't shoot. I chose, because I love you." Love, passionate, explosive, forged in blood twice now. He lifted his head, eyes burning with it. "I can't live in a world without you," he said, raw. "Marry me tomorrow, here, no waiting." Tears spilled. Yes. The wedding was small, intimate, garden under autumn leaves, Maddie carrying rings, Agnes witnessing, Dr. Ellison pronouncing us bound. I wore simple white, shoulder bandaged but glowing. Alexander's vows broke, promises of protection, devotion, a life where shadows would never touch us again. Months later, our daughter arrived, healthy, crying lustily into Alexander's trembling hands. We named her Grace for the mercy we had found in each other. Epilogue. 1 year on, snow falling again outside mansion windows. I stood radiant, scars silver badges of courage, holding Grace while Maddie played nearby. Alexander wrapped arms around us all, whispering forever. From the porous nurse who once endured cold wind and empty cupboards to the fiercely loved heart of Chicago's most powerful family, love had bridged every divide. Wealth and poverty, danger and safety, none could separate compassion, devotion, the explosive power of hearts that chose each other. This story teaches us profound knowledge about courage, knowledge about mercy, knowledge about redemption, knowledge about family, and knowledge about love's triumph over darkness. It offers a vital lesson in selflessness, a lesson in forgiveness, a lesson in protection, a lesson in choosing light, and a lesson in embracing second chances. True education comes from understanding these truths. Education of the heart, education through pain, education in gratitude, education via sacrifice, and education that real wealth lies in connection. If you felt moved by Lily and Alexander's journey, please subscribe to the channel Alex Truths, like this video, and share it with someone who needs hope today. We bring engaging stories every day. Tell us in comments, how did this story touch you? Does it connect to real life? Share your emotions from deep within your heart so we can listen and grow together. Wishing everyone watching good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. See you in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.